I never thought I'd be betrayed by the one I loved most. But life has a way of testing our strength, and sometimes the hardest lessons come from the deepest wounds. If you've ever felt like your world is falling apart, remember, revenge might give you temporary satisfaction, but only forgiveness and letting go can set you free. Watch my story unfold, and if you resonate with the pain and the lessons learned, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe. Let's heal together, because the road to peace starts with understanding our own journey. I'm Edward. I thought I had it all: a beautiful wife, a healthy son, and a stable life. Connie and I had been married for over 10 years. We lived in a quiet suburban home, a place where everything seemed perfect. Our son Max was the light of our lives. Smart, cheerful, and always ready with a smile. He made everything worthwhile. I couldn't have asked for a better family. But lately, something felt off. It wasn't obvious at first, but the subtle changes began to accumulate. Connie, the woman I had known so well, started acting distant. She wasn't as affectionate as she used to be. Her gaze no longer lingered on me like it once did. It was like she was physically there, but her mind was elsewhere. I didn't know what to make of it at first, but it was hard to ignore. It wasn't just her behavior, it was the little things. She started coming home late from work, without any real explanation. I would ask her about her day, and she would brush me off, giving me vague answers. She became more protective of her phone, always locking it when I entered the room. There were whispers of something amiss, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Max seemed to notice it too. He had started asking questions about why his mum and dad were always so tense. "Is everything okay between you and Mum, Dad?" He asked me one evening, his innocent eyes full of confusion. The question hit me like a punch to the gut. How could I explain to my 8-year-old son that the person he looked up to was no longer the person I once knew? One evening, I came home early from work. Max was in his room playing, and the house was unusually quiet. Connie wasn't in the living room, and I found it strange. I walked upstairs to find her in the office, hunched over her desk, her face flushed with concentration. But what really caught my attention was the sound of her hurried typing, almost frantic. When she saw me at the door, she quickly minimized the window on her laptop. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked casually, trying not to sound suspicious. "Oh, nothing," she said, standing up quickly. "Just work stuff." But there was something in her voice, something that didn't sound right. I didn't press further, but in the back of my mind, a seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Connie seemed more distracted, more distant. The way she checked her phone constantly, the way she'd leave the room when a call came in, it all pointed to one thing. Something was happening, and I needed to know what. It was the nagging feeling that wouldn't go away, the feeling that I was losing her to someone or something. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, that maybe I was overthinking things, but I knew better. Something had shifted, and I wasn't prepared to let it slide. The more I observed, the more certain I became that this wasn't just in my head. There was something going on between Connie and another man, and I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal that gnawed at me, a feeling that grew stronger every day. I had to find out the truth. One evening, the weight of my growing suspicion became too much to ignore. I decided to follow Connie. It wasn't like me to spy on her, but something deep inside told me I had no choice. She had been acting strangely for weeks, and no matter how much I wanted to believe it was all in my head, the doubt kept gnawing at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to her behavior than just being tired or stressed. That night, I watched as Connie grabbed her coat and walked out the door, not even bothering to tell me where she was going. Max was sitting on the couch, his eyes following her every move. "Where's Mum going, Dad?" he asked, his voice filled with innocent curiosity. I tried to mask my discomfort with a weak smile, but the question hit me like a dagger. "She's just going out for a bit. Don't worry about it," I said, trying to sound casual, but inside, a storm was brewing. I could feel the guilt creeping up on me. How could I lie to my son? How could I pretend everything was fine when deep down I knew something wasn't? Max didn't press further, but I could tell he was concerned. I told him to finish his homework, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't focus on anything except Connie. Where was she going? Who was she meeting? The more I thought about it, the more my suspicion grew. I knew I had to get answers. I spent the next few nights watching her more closely. I started paying attention to her routines, the little things that never caught my attention before. Her late-night phone calls, the way she seemed to rush off whenever I came into the room. I even started checking her car's GPS history, something I never thought I'd do. I was desperate to find out the truth. And then, one fateful evening, I followed her. I kept a safe distance as she drove, my heart racing with every mile. After a while, she parked at a quiet, upscale hotel on the outskirts of town. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My breath caught in my throat as I watched her walk out of the car and meet a man. The man was tall, with dark hair, and they exchanged a long, intimate kiss before walking into the hotel together. I couldn't move. I just stood there, paralyzed, watching them disappear behind the hotel's glass doors. The truth hit me like a freight train. Connie was having an affair with a man named Paul, someone I didn't even know existed. My world crumbled in that moment, and everything I thought I knew about my wife and my life seemed like a lie. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. My mind was reeling, my emotions all over the place. Anger, confusion, and heartbreak collided in a dizzying spiral. I couldn't even bring myself to confront her. I just watched. When I got home, Max was waiting for me. "Did Mum come back?" he asked, his eyes full of hope. I didn't know how to answer him. How could I tell him that the woman he loved was lying to us? How could I explain this to an innocent child when I could barely understand it myself? The truth was too painful to accept, but it was right there in front of me. Connie was betraying me, and now I had to figure out what to do next. I didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. Everything had changed, and I was no longer sure who my wife really was. That night, everything changed. I had decided to follow Connie once more. It felt like I was losing my grip on everything I had once believed to be solid. I could no longer ignore the doubts that had been gnawing at me, so I silently slipped out of the house after dinner. Max was in his room, playing with his toys, completely unaware of the turmoil I was about to witness. I drove in the direction I had seen her go before, heart pounding in my chest. The night was dark, the streets empty. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that there was nothing to worry about. But deep down, I knew I had to see it for myself. I parked at a distance, staying far enough away not to be noticed. As I watched from behind the cover of my car, Connie walked into a luxurious hotel, but she wasn't alone. Paul was with her. They walked side by side, laughing softly as they entered the building hand in hand. My stomach twisted into knots, and I could feel the weight of my breath, shallow and shaky, as if the very air had turned thick with betrayal. I couldn't move. I felt frozen, like I had just fallen into an abyss and was powerless to climb out. Watching them walk through the hotel doors together felt like a slap in the face. It was confirmation of everything I feared. The woman I loved, the mother of my child, was having an affair. It wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was real, and it was happening right before my eyes. I didn't stay any longer. I couldn't. I turned around and drove back home, my mind spiraling. The road seemed endless, and with every mile I put between the hotel and myself, I felt like I was sinking deeper into a pit of despair. My chest was tight with a mixture of rage, betrayal, and sorrow. But the worst part was the nagging fear of how this would affect Max. When I walked back into the house, everything felt off. It was the same house, the same rooms, but it felt like I was in a completely different world now. I found Max still in his room, playing with his Legos, completely unaware of the emotional earthquake that had just shattered my world. I watched him for a moment, feeling like the worst father in the world. He had no idea what was going on, and yet his innocence made me feel more guilty than ever. How could I tell him that the person he trusted the most was lying to us both? I sat down next to him and watched him build his little tower, his face full of concentration. I couldn't bear the thought of this sweet, innocent child growing up with a broken family. I couldn't imagine how much this would hurt him in the long run. But at the same time, I couldn't keep living a lie. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it would be. The storm inside me was just beginning. I felt like a man teetering on the edge of something massive, and no matter how hard I tried to push it away, I knew I couldn't stop it. Connie's betrayal had torn apart the world I thought I knew, and now I had to navigate a new reality. But the question was, where did I go from here? How could I live with the truth? Max was playing, unaware of the battle going on in my mind, and for a moment I wished I could go back to a time before all this started. But I knew that wasn't possible. The storm was here, and it was only going to get worse. The following day, I couldn't stand the weight of the lies anymore. My mind raced, my heart pounded, and I knew I had to confront her. I had to hear it from her. Connie couldn't keep running from the truth, and neither could I. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine anymore. I had seen enough. The truth had been laid bare before me, and it was time to face it head on. I waited for her to return home, pacing back and forth in the living room, my hands shaking. When she walked through the door, the same calm smile she always had on her face was gone. She immediately saw the look in my eyes. I didn't even speak at first. I didn't need to. I just stared at her, the silence between us thick with unspoken words. She knew what was coming. "Connie, I know about Paul," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but the words felt like thunder in the room. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide, then she quickly recovered, trying to mask the panic in her face. "Edward, listen, I can explain." But I couldn't let her. Not this time. I stepped closer, the anger and hurt rising like a tidal wave inside me. "Explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for God knows how long. How you've been sleeping with another man behind my back. How you've been deceiving me, deceiving our family." The room seemed to close in on us, the walls pressing tighter with each word that left my mouth. Connie opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I didn't want to hear her explanations anymore. I didn't need any more excuses. Finally, after a long, suffocating silence, she spoke, her voice weak but resigned. "It's true, Edward. It's been happening for months. I've been seeing Paul, and I'm sorry, but I haven't loved you for a long time. I didn't know how to tell you. It's been hard, but I've made my choice. Her words hit me like a slap across the face. I wanted to scream, to shout, to rage against her, but the words wouldn't come. I felt empty. I felt like my soul had been ripped out. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was the death of everything I had known, everything I had worked for, everything I thought was real. I stood there, stunned, as Connie looked at me with that same calm, indifferent expression. She wasn't crying. She wasn't apologizing. There was no remorse in her eyes. It was like I was talking to a stranger. The woman I had loved was gone. And then Max walked into the room. "Mum, Dad?" Max asked, looking from one of us to the other with confusion in his eyes. He must have heard our voices raised, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. I looked at my son, standing there, innocent and unaware of the devastation that was unfolding before him. His big, trusting eyes were searching for answers, but I didn't have any to give him. I couldn't lie to him anymore. "Max," I said softly, my heart breaking as I looked at him. "Come here." He walked over, unsure, his small hand reaching for mine. I knelt down to his level, trying to steady my shaking hands. "Max, things are going to be different from now on." Max looked at me, confused, but there was an understanding in his gaze. He didn't know what was happening, but he could feel it. He could sense that something was wrong. "I don't understand, Dad," he whispered, his voice small. "Why is Mum so upset? Why are you both upset?" I opened my mouth to answer, but the words caught in my throat. How do you explain to a child that the foundation of his world is crumbling, that the love between his parents has evaporated? I couldn't do it. Not yet. Looking back at Connie, I knew this was the beginning of the end. There was no going back now. The truth had been spoken, and there was no way to undo the damage. I had never felt more alone in my life. Connie's betrayal sent me spiraling into an emotional abyss, one I couldn't claw my way out of. I had never felt so out of control in my life. Anger consumed me, twisting and clawing at my insides. But anger alone wasn't enough. No, I needed something more. I couldn't let Connie get away with this, and I wasn't going to let her walk away from our marriage unscathed. If she thought she could destroy my life and tear apart my family, she was gravely mistaken. I needed revenge. I started digging into Paul's life. At first, it was just a hunch of feeling that there was more to him than just being another man in Connie's life. The more I uncovered, the deeper the rabbit hole went. Paul wasn't just some random guy. He was a con artist, a liar, someone who had used his charm and manipulation to get ahead, leaving a trail of victims behind him. I found records of fraudulent businesses, bank accounts tied to his name, and legal disputes where he'd been accused of swindling people out of their life savings. The more I looked, the more disgusted I became. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated move by both Paul and Connie. She had been entangled in his web, just as much a part of his lies as he was. I couldn't stop now. This man had destroyed my life, and I was going to make sure he paid for it. I started planning, carefully, methodically. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't afford to make mistakes. I wasn't just playing with my emotions anymore, I was playing with fire. But as I delved deeper into my plan for revenge, I began to realize something more troubling. Max, my son, was noticing the change in me. He wasn't blind. The once calm and patient father he knew was now a man on edge. My outbursts, the coldness in my tone, the long hours spent brooding over my computer screen, Max could feel it all. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, Staring at the screen with Paul's criminal history laid out before me, I heard Max's soft footsteps behind me. He stood there for a moment, his small hands clutching the back of the chair as he stared at me, his eyes filled with confusion and concern. "Dad," he said quietly, breaking the silence that had settled between us. "Why don't you and Mum talk like you used to?" His words hit me harder than anything else. They cut through the fog of my anger, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt twist my insides. Max was just a kid. He didn't deserve any of this. But how could I explain to him that his mother had torn our family apart? How could I tell him that the man he once looked up to was now consumed by thoughts of vengeance? I turned in my chair, facing him fully. "Max." The words felt hollow, useless. I didn't have an answer for him, not one that wouldn't hurt him. How could I tell him the truth without ruining everything he believed about family, about love? Instead, I swallowed hard and forced a smile, though it didn't reach my eyes. "It's nothing to worry about, buddy. Things will get better, okay?" But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. And I could tell he didn't either. His eyes searched mine, full of uncertainty, but he didn't press the issue. He nodded slowly and walked away, leaving me with a sickening sense of guilt. The little boy I had raised, the innocent child who had never known such pain, was now witnessing his world shatter. I had failed him. But worse, I had let my need for revenge pull me further away from the person I used to be, the person he needed me to be. The storm of anger and betrayal inside me only grew, fueled by the pain I saw in Max's eyes. He didn't deserve this, but neither did I, and I couldn't stop. Not now, not when the taste of revenge was so close, so tangible. Connie had destroyed our family, and now it was time for her to feel the consequences of her actions. I would make sure of it. As the days passed, my obsession with revenge grew stronger. I could feel the anger pulsing through my veins, but more than that, I could sense the coldness in my heart. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was consumed by it. I had to make Paul pay, not just for what he did to me, but for what he did to my son, my family. I couldn't allow him to continue living his life without facing the consequences of his actions. And I wasn't going to stop until he felt the weight of every lie, every betrayal, and every moment he stole from me. I spent countless nights researching, digging into Paul's past, uncovering every dark secret he thought was buried. His fraudulent businesses, his criminal ties, his past relationships that were nothing but webs of lies. I knew I had the power to destroy him. I had the information I needed, and now it was time to strike. I started to make my move. I contacted a few of Paul's former associates, people he thought he had silenced. With the right pressure, I knew I could bring his entire empire crashing down. I sent him messages, cryptic and threatening, warning him that I knew everything about him. I wasn't subtle. I wanted him to feel the fear, to know that I was watching him, always one step ahead. But even as I watched him squirm, as he grew increasingly paranoid, I didn't feel the relief I thought I would. The anger was still there, but it was mixed with something else, something darker. The more I hurt Paul, the more I hurt myself. I wasn't just punishing him, I was punishing myself too. And in the end, it didn't bring me any peace. It only made the void inside me grow. At the same time, Max was becoming more distant from me. I noticed it more and more every day. The light in his eyes that once was so bright, so full of innocence, was dimming. He wasn't the happy, talkative boy he used to be. Now he sat in silence, staring at the TV or burying himself in his room, barely speaking unless absolutely necessary. I could feel his hurt. I knew that my obsession with revenge was eating away at him, even if he couldn't fully understand it. He didn't know the full truth about what was going on, but he could sense the tension. He could feel the shift in the air, the emotional weight that hung over our house like a dark cloud. One night, after a long day of sending more threats to Paul, I walked into the kitchen and found Max sitting at the table, his head down, playing with his food. His silence struck me like a slap across the face. It was as if I had lost him already. "Max," I said softly, sitting down beside him. "What's going on, buddy? You're not yourself lately." He didn't answer at first, his eyes glued to the plate in front of him. When he finally looked up, I saw it fear. It was clear as day in his eyes. "Dad, why are you so angry all the time? Why don't you and Mum talk anymore? You used to smile, and now you just yell." I felt my heart crack. How could I explain this to him? How could I tell him that everything had fallen apart? That I was too blinded by my own pain to see what was happening to him? "I'm sorry, Max," I said, my voice breaking. I'm trying to make things right, okay? It's complicated, but I promise we'll be okay." But even as I said the words, I knew they were empty. I wasn't okay. I wasn't sure if Max was okay either. My need for revenge had created a chasm between us that I didn't know how to bridge. As I watched him silently push his food around, I couldn't help but feel like I was losing him. My fixation on punishing Paul, on making him pay, was driving a wedge between me and my son. And for what? To satisfy my anger, to make myself feel better. I knew I had to stop. I had to find a way to put an end to this obsession before it completely destroyed me and Max. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I could stop. Not yet. As the days went by, the tension in our house grew thicker, and I found myself slipping further into the abyss of my obsession. Max, my sweet boy, was becoming more and more aware of the cracks in our family. He wasn't stupid. He had always been perceptive, and it wasn't long before his questions started to cut through the silence in ways that I couldn't ignore. "Dad," he asked one evening as we were sitting together at the dinner table, his voice soft but curious. "Why don't you and Mum talk like you used to? You never laugh anymore. You guys are always mad at each other." His words stabbed into me, and I could feel the weight of his confusion. How could I explain to him that it wasn't just about arguments or misunderstandings? That the very foundation of our family had been shattered by his mother's lies and betrayal? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth, not yet. "I'm sorry, Max," I said, my voice strained. "Things have been complicated, but we'll work it out, I promise." Max didn't look convinced. His eyes searched mine for answers, but all I could offer was a half-hearted smile that didn't reach my eyes. How could I keep promising him that everything would be okay when I didn't believe it myself? Despite the guilt that was eating me up inside, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop the plans I was making, the revenge that was fueling me. I had to make sure Paul felt the weight of his actions. I had to make Connie regret everything she'd done to us. But it wasn't just about Paul anymore. The more I dug into her life, the more I began to uncover secrets that Connie had hidden from me for years. I had started looking into her past, piecing together fragments of information from conversations, old photographs, and even from some of her friends who hadn't been as careful with their words as they should have been. What I found shook me to my core. There were affairs I had never known about. People she had been with before me, during our marriage, people I had trusted her not to betray me with. There were lies, manipulations, and a web of deceit that I hadn't even begun to understand. Connie had built this facade of a perfect life, but beneath it was a dark truth I had been blind to. I discovered that, Just like Paul, Connie had a history of using people for her own gain. She had led me to believe that she was this perfect wife and mother, but in reality, she had been hiding parts of herself from me, parts that I didn't want to see. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. Every secret felt like another knife being driven into my back. I didn't know how much longer I could carry this burden of knowing. Everything of understanding just how thoroughly she had deceived me. It made me sick to my stomach, but at the same time, it pushed me further into my need for retribution. I couldn't let her get away with it. Not after all the lies, not after everything she'd taken from me. Max's innocent questions continued to haunt me, and each time I saw the confusion in his eyes, I felt like a failure as a father. But the anger inside me was too strong. I wasn't ready to face the truth about myself yet. Not ready to accept the damage I was doing to my son by continuing down this path. I needed to finish what I started. I needed to destroy everything that Connie had built, and I wasn't going to stop until I had torn down every wall she'd hidden behind. The day Paul came to see me, I had already crossed a line that I couldn't come back from. I had pushed him into a corner, and now he was standing in front of me, pleading for mercy. I could see the fear in his eyes, the desperation. For a brief moment, I almost felt a pang of sympathy for him. But that sympathy faded quickly, replaced by the cold certainty that I had gone too far to turn back now. "Edward, please," Paul begged, his voice trembling. "I've made mistakes, but I'm not the enemy here. Please, I'll do anything. Just stop with the threats." I stared at him, my eyes filled with rage. I had spent weeks gathering information, planning my next move, and now here he was, pleading for his life. He thought a few words would make me stop, would make everything go away. But there was no going back now. The revenge I had been seeking had consumed me entirely. "You should have thought about that before you destroyed my life," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "You don't get to just walk away from this. You don't get to ruin everything and then act like it was nothing." Paul tried to argue, tried to explain himself, but it was too late. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to let him off easy. I had brought everything to the surface, his lies, his crimes, and I wasn't about to let him walk away without feeling the consequences. I pushed him to the edge, and now I was going to make sure he felt every ounce of the pain he had caused me. As he left, I felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just emptiness. I thought revenge would give me something to hold on to, something to take back from the wreckage of my life. But it didn't. All it gave me was more bitterness, more anger, and a sense of being even more lost than before. The worst part was that Max was starting to notice. He could feel the tension in the air, even when I tried to hide it from him. He had seen the changes in me, in the way I reacted to things, in the way I handled the constant pressure I had placed on myself. And now, he was starting to ask questions that cut to the core of everything I was doing. "Dad," Max said one evening, his voice trembling with uncertainty, "why are you doing this? Why are you so angry all the time? Why do you keep hurting him?" I didn't know how to answer him. The truth was too much for him to bear. I couldn't tell him that everything I had been doing was driven by hatred and pain, that the man I had become was a direct result of my desire to make others suffer the way I had suffered. I didn't want Max to see me as someone capable of such destruction, but I knew I was already too far gone. I couldn't stop now. His question echoed in my mind long after he had gone to bed. "Why are you doing this?" The truth was, I didn't even know anymore. What had started as a search for justice had turned into a mission of pure vengeance. And in the process, I was destroying my own son, my own family. Max didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of my bitterness. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't bring myself to turn back. I had lost control, and it seemed that the more I tried to hurt Paul, the more I was hurting Max. I looked at the empty room, the silence heavy around me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of what I had done. The storm inside me hadn't passed, it had only grown stronger. And the worst part, I didn't know how to stop it. It had all led to this moment. I had reached my breaking point, and there was no turning back. I had tried to hold on to the fragments of love I once felt for Connie, but now there was nothing left. All that remained was bitterness, anger, and a deep, gnawing hatred. The woman I had once devoted my life to was now nothing more than a stranger who had torn apart everything I held dear. I had told myself for weeks that I could forgive her, that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild what we had lost. But the truth was clear now. There was no rebuilding. Not after everything that had happened. Not after the lies, the betrayal, and the way she had abandoned me for another man. Connie had made her choice, and it was time for me to accept it. I called her into the living room. The tension was thick, and I could almost hear the words that would end it all hanging in the air between us. Connie walked in, her face guarded, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She knew this was it, the end. "Connie," I started, my voice flat, emotionless. "I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that we're still a family. I've given everything to you, and you chose him. You chose Paul over me. You chose him over our son." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. I wasn't interested in hearing excuses anymore. "No, Connie, this is it. There's nothing left to say. I've made it clear to you what my life means to me, and you've made your choice. But I need you to hear me now. It's over." Connie's face softened for a moment, and she took a step toward me. She looked like she wanted to say something, apologize, maybe, but I was done. I wasn't going to let her sweet words manipulate me anymore. I had given her enough chances. I stood up from my seat and faced her squarely. "You have one choice left. You can choose him or you can choose me. But it's not going to be both. Not anymore." For a long moment, she didn't answer. She just stood there, her lips trembling, caught between the life she had built with me and the life she wanted with Paul. I watched her, searching her face for any sign that she might change her mind, but there was nothing. It was too late. She had already made her decision long ago. And then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, but the words cut through the silence like a knife. "I choose Paul." I felt a cold emptiness wash over me. It was done. It was over. The woman I had loved, the mother of my child, had chosen another man over her family. And in that moment, I realized that all the love I had once felt for her had died a long time ago. I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. I had no more tears left to shed for her, no more regrets. Max, who had been standing by the door, watching everything unfold, stepped into the room. His small figure looked even more fragile in that moment. His eyes flickered between me and Connie, and I could see the confusion and hurt in his gaze. He didn't understand. He couldn't. "Why, Mum?" Max's voice cracked as he spoke, his eyes filled with tears. "Why can't we just be a family again?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't have an answer for him. I couldn't explain why his mother had chosen another man over him, over everything we had built. I could see the hurt in Max's eyes, the deep sadness that no child should ever have to carry. But I couldn't fix this for him. I couldn't make it right. "Max," I said, my voice breaking as I kneeled down to his level. "I'm sorry, buddy. I know this is hard, but sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to. We can't change what's happened, but we can try to move forward." Max didn't respond. He just hugged me, his small arms around my neck, holding on like I was the only thing left in the world that made sense to him. And in that moment, I knew that this was it. The end of a chapter in our lives, and the beginning of something new. I stood up, holding Max close, and looked at Connie one last time. There were no more words between us. There was nothing left to say. It was over. It had to be. I had let go of Connie. I had let go of Paul. But even though the decision had been made, the weight of the aftermath was something I couldn't shake off. No matter how much I tried to move forward, the pain lingered like a shadow, always there, always reminding me of everything I had lost. For weeks, I had drowned myself in thoughts of vengeance, in making sure everyone who had hurt me felt the consequences. But now, as I stood on the precipice of a new life, I realized that I wasn't the same person anymore. The rage had taken everything I once was. I wasn't just angry, I was broken. Max and I moved into a small apartment, far from the house where we once lived with Connie. It was a fresh start, a new chapter for both of us, but the silence in the air was deafening. Max tried to be brave, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. He didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew things had changed. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of my actions. I had destroyed our family, and now I had to live with the consequences. I spent the first few weeks trying to create a sense of normalcy for Max. I made sure he went to school, kept him occupied with the things he loved, tried to make him laugh like he used to, but I knew it wasn't enough. He missed Connie. He missed the life we had before everything fell apart. And no matter how much I tried to reassure him, I knew that things would never be the same. At night, after Max had fallen asleep, I would sit by the window, staring into the darkness. I thought about everything that had happened, about all the choices I had made, and about the path I was now on. The guilt still gnawed at me, even though I knew, deep down, that I had done what I had to do. I had let go of a woman who had never truly loved me, who had betrayed me in ways I could never forgive. But the pain of losing my family, of losing my son's trust, was something I couldn't escape. The guilt wasn't just about Connie's betrayal. It was about the effect it had on Max. I couldn't undo the damage I had caused. I couldn't make him forget the arguments, the silence, the looks of confusion and hurt that had crossed his face. But I could protect him now. I could make sure he never felt the weight of my decisions again. I promised myself that I would be the father he needed, that I would shield him from the wreckage of the past. It was going to be hard, but I had no other choice. I couldn't afford to fail him. Max and I would rebuild. We would learn to live without the ghosts of the past hanging over us. And maybe, just maybe, I would find a way to forgive myself. But for now, all I could do was hold on to the hope that tomorrow would be better than today. And that, despite everything, there was still a future worth fighting for. The story is a painful reminder of the consequences of betrayal and the lasting impact it can have on both individuals and families. Edward's journey teaches us that revenge, no matter how justified it may feel in the moment, only deepens the wounds and extends the suffering. Holding on to anger and resentment poisons not only the relationship with others, but also our own peace of mind. The true lesson lies in the importance of letting go and choosing healing over vengeance. Despite the pain and guilt, Edward finds the strength to rebuild his life for the sake of his son. The story reminds us that while we cannot change the past, we have the power to shape our future. Even in the face of heartbreak and loss, we can choose to rise above, protect those we love, and move forward with hope. It teaches us the importance of forgiveness, not just for others, but for ourselves. Only by letting go of the past can we create space for new beginnings and find peace within.